India-EU relationship have grown leaps and bounds, and we know that there are several elements to this relationship: trade, security, and more elements are being added. This relationship is seen as factor of stability in an increasingly geopolitically tensed world. With me is the EU ambassador to India. So welcome to WION. It's pleasure to have you in WION Studios. And my first question to you is: your tenure is coming to an end. Delhi, of course, will be missing you. You made a lot of friends here, but how do you see your tenure here in Delhi? During your tenure, of course, significant developments happened in the relationship. Relationship has gone towards much more substantive elements, including a trade deal by end of this year.
Thank you, Sidon, for having me in WION podcast. It's been quite of a journey, indeed, over the last 3 years. I think probably the largest, most important achievement is that we placed the EU-India relationship where it should be, at the top. And it has been arguably long in the making, because that has not happened overnight. There's been patient work over the past years, but for everyone to see the significant achievements. But when I'm saying that's been long in the making is simply reflecting the fact that we are in a high strategic game here. Our positioning as Europe has been determined by a decade of transformation, where we've been subjected to major shocks. Brexit, if you recall, 10 years ago. There was COVID. There was the Russian invasion, aggression against Ukraine. There was also what we call the China shock, economic shock, or China shock square, not China shock 2. And indeed a more transactional America first US. So all this has led to sort of strategic recalibration in Europe. How we can increase our resilience, economic resilience, strengthen our security and defense, maintain our destiny in our hands, as Chancellor Merkel once said. So again, that background, somehow a relationship with India was a kind of a compelling strategic case because of our complementarities, because of what we can offer to each other. We share values, we share big markets, and all came in somehow into that strategic equation as far as the EU is concerned. And somehow we had the impression, but more than the impression, the evidence, that India made a similar journey, so a journey of convergence. So after my tenure, I think we are probably at this, not the highest point, because sky is the limit, but that's certainly at a very high point in our relationship. But now, there is no room for complacency. We need to deliver, deliver, and deliver.
Deliver, and one thing that everyone is waiting for in terms of its delivery is the trade deal. We saw the Big Bang announcement, the mother of all trade deal, as EU leadership has put it. It is supposed to get concluded by year end. So if you can give us a certain first element on when it will be concluded, and second, how important is this trade deal?
Yeah, so what we did at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, at the time of the summit, we concluded the negotiation. So basically the two negotiating teams froze the text and they agreed that we have a deal on the text. Now we go into what we call the legal vetting, the legal scrubbing, just to make sure that there is no inconsistency in the text, and go really into the details, because God or the devil is in the details. So this is what the legal vetting is all about. And you have this very week an India team in Brussels precisely for that purpose. And so there's been an intensified pace in negotiations. For the negotiation is not really like the word, but exchanges between the two teams. And with this, we would hopefully have a text which is cleaned up, so to say, legally speaking, ready. We have an additional step on the EU side, is that when the the document is ready for signing, then after he goes for the consent of our European Parliament, and then he enters into force. But with this, we are confident that we could have this document signed by end of year, which would be, in terms of timeline, quite remarkable if you consider that we concluded the negotiation early in the year, in the same year, to be able to sign. That is really, I would say, an express train by any standard, whether European or Indian. So, and that is reflective of the importance of the FTA, which I think both for India is probably the biggest ever trade deal they sign. It's not because of the size of our respective markets, it's also its substantial and meaningful FTA in terms of tariff reduction or elimination, in terms of certain areas quotas. We are talking about 99% and for the EU opening, 97% on tariffs opening for India. So it's a large FTA in terms of its coverage. So with this, I think it will be a great enabler for both Indian and European business. And I can tell you, the business communities on both sides are really expecting this to enter into force as quickly as possible. So we are I think on a good trajectory. As I said, we have to deliver. We know that. It's not the time to have doubts or second thoughts. I think both the leadership on both sides is determined to have it signed. So we look forward to that event by the end of the year.
You mentioned about the businesses. Now, just for an understanding, it's being dubbed as the mother of all trade deal. Now, how will it simplify the lives of businesses in India and in Europe, and essentially how it helps the common man, both sides, in getting products from each other's countries? A larger point is also how it changes the global trading order. How will this FTA change that?
I think maybe starting by the second part of your question, if you consider that you have 1/4 of the world GDP and 1/4 of the world demography covered by this FTA, inevitably it will have an impact. India is only 2% or 3% of the global trade, but is bound to grow even more. And EU is the largest trading bloc in the world, at 17%. So when you combine the forces of these two markets, you will see way more trade, two-way trade between the two geographies. The track record of any FTA we sign is that over the years that follow, you see a tremendous increase in import and export. So we are confident that within 5 years' time, you could have a doubling of the EU-India two-way trade. So I think that's significant because that represents opportunities for Indian companies as much as European companies to export. To sell. But more than that, it's a vehicle that would allow also for investment and localization of production. So in a way, you can describe the FTA as a catalyst and an enabler for trade that will bring not only increase the trade volumes, the trade value, but also bring the two ecosystems closer. So that is pretty significant. And indeed, our FTAs in the EU always MFN, most favored nations clause, which is WTO compatible. Unfortunately, the WTO is a bit in the doldrums. I mean, we've been pushing for the reform of the the WTO, but short of that, having bilateral FTAs with key partners is important for us. So this is what we are doing, not as a second best, but as something that also buttresses a level playing field, a rule-based trade order. And that's the reason why actually more and more partners want to have trade deals with the EU. We just signed up with Indonesia, with Australia, with Singapore, Vietnam. We have also negotiation with Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines. So it shows that the power of attraction of the European economy as a trade partner is significant. So if you want, India was a big missing piece in all that, and now we have it, and I think it's great.
So clearly a win-win. But other than trade, which has emerged as the important element of the relationship, EU is the biggest trading partner of India. The other aspect that has emerged, especially in your tenure, is security domain. We saw the big announcements happening during the visit, the India-EU summit in January, and we know that both sides are looking at maritime cooperation. They are looking at defense cooperation. The defense industry, the ecosystem also plans to combine together. So if you can give an overview as to how India and EU are coming together in this domain, which was almost not present 5 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think that we started our first dialogue and consultation on security in defense 5 years ago, and there have been so much that happened in the meantime. I mean, today we have the EU maritime operations in the Northwest Indian Ocean, Atalanta and Aspides, and there is cooperation with the Indian Navy in the fight against piracy, in exchanging information in terms of situational awareness. So it's not just talking points, it's really happening. There are other areas like cyber, hybrid threats, counterterrorism, which are other areas of dialogue. Space, now we have the security and defense dimension of space. So we cover, I would say, what is conventional and less conventional threats and risk. And I think this is a reflection of the new, unfortunately, the new normal of the security and defense threats. And I think it has probably now been noticed in Delhi that the EU is not the EU it used to be. This is, an economic giant, but a security dwarf or non-quantity in terms of security. But something that people do not really realize is how much the EU has developed into a security and defense actor and provider. Just to give the figure, the security and defense budget of EU member states collectively has increased 63% since 2020. So last year it reached a total of 385 billion euros, and it will be over 400 billion euros this year. So there is a rearmament of Europe, and we have to contend with some capability gaps. On the Indian side, we see also India exposed to threats. It's its close neighborhood and challenges, whether it's on land, at sea, or in the cyberspace. And there are also capabilities that are in want. And so in a way, if you want, this security and defense come at this crossroad where basically EU and India see how they could complement each other in many ways. So what we did at the summit, we signed a security and defense partnership, which is, if you want, a political signal of comfort in our relationship to address and deepen relationship in security and defense. What we are negotiating now is a security of information agreement, which will allow for the exchange of confidential information related to security and defense. So that will be the legal enabler. And the third level that you describe is indeed defense industry cooperation. So we have also provisions to set up a business forum dedicated to security and defense. So we want the defense company from both sides to find, the space to exchange and see where they can complement each other, where they can join forces in joint development, joint procurement. So there is a lot already happening at the level of bilateral level with member states, but the EU will provide a larger frame, because more and more member states are also looking at the EU to act together in terms of large programs. So I think this is at this point that we are, and I'm pretty sure you will see way more deeper cooperation between the EU and India in security and defense.
So I want to talk more on the last bit, on the defense industry bit, because India is focusing on co-production. India is focusing on Atmanirbhar, that is make in India. Where can EU play an important role in this aspect? Because this is an element which India has discussed with other partners as well, but it looks like EU can be a very good partner in that aspect.
So I would say EU and its member states, I would put them together, because what we will be doing, and we have started to do, is that at the EU level, with the EU budget, we are mobilizing loan capacity for our European member states So that was the so-called SAFE program, Security for Europe, that has a 150 billion loan capacity. So this it allows for 35% to do it with third countries. So we have done the SAFE in a situation of pressure because of the war of aggression of Russia in Ukraine that threatens directly our territory. And we are looking at the successor of SAFE. And I think this construct is probably the space within which we could also have in the future cooperation, defense industry cooperation with India. Meaning, concretely, you could have and I saw there was news, like a Bharat Forge company having an establishment of a company listed in Europe, taking part in programs. The same way that you would have European defense company established here in India taking part in procurement in India. So this is building the ecosystems, bottom up, while you create the instruments top down. So I think this is what we are developing now.
And the focus on Indo-Pacific continues because there are countries who clearly are not very focused on Indo-Pacific now. But how can India and Europe work together in the Indo-Pacific? India has its own plans, initiatives. EU also is looking forward to work in Indo-Pacific?
Well, I think I'd like to challenge the view that the EU is only concerned about what happens on its own continent and sort of single issue agenda when it comes to security and strategy. And I think the very fact that we've developed the relationship with India speaks volume about how we have a sort of way broader view. And it's always good to recall that the EU has vested interest and strong equity in that part of the world. 30 to 40% of our trade, import and export, go through the Indian Ocean and the Straits. We provide a lot of European FDI in that part of the world. So economically, we have already made our pivot to the the Indo-Pacific area, and we will increasingly do so because that will be where the conveyor belt of global growth will be. When the EU is signing so many FTAs with countries of the Indo-Pacific space, it means something. When the EU and the CPTPP countries are looking at ways of harmonizing their approach and their standards, it means something. So arguably, we are not what I would call a hard security provider. Some of our member states may have, naval assets, crossing the straits, but we are certainly increasingly recognized by partners in the regions as a smart security enabler. Just to give an example, last week there was this EURA conference here in Delhi, and we had teams coming from Europe. We as an observer in EURA, we are now joining the IPOI initiative. So we are here. And don't forget that we have one member state, namely France, with a resident power. So I think we are not going to move and to cast our eyes in a different direction. Actually, we will remain very much focused on the Indian Ocean and as much as the Pacific. But I say Indian Ocean is because I think increasingly the Indian Ocean emerges as a space of contestation. So it might be the crucible of strategy in the future. So I think the EU also cannot afford not being there.
I'll go on another aspect, that's the people-to-people relationship, but you've made an important point that Indian Ocean is an area which has seen increased contestation. Asking a question on that backdrop, we have seen this West Asia conflict that has impacted everyone, and especially in terms of the energy prices here in India, also in Europe as well. Now, how have the Indian government and the European leadership worked together, have conversation on that aspect? I know that the Indian foreign minister has been to Europe several times since the conflict started, and he had discussion with each member countries. But Brussels and New Delhi, how do you see the situation as, and how do you see the areas of cooperation?
Yeah, I think there is been a lot of exchanges. Dr. Jaishankar was in regular contact with High Representative Kaja Kallas. So keeping each other informed about our contacts with the different players was very important. I think there was a similar concerns about a conflict that spirals out of control. So bringing that to an end, finding a ceasefire, I think was very important. As far as the EU, we've been involved of the JCPOA, the Joint and Comprehensive Agreement with Iran, and denying Iran's the capacity to acquire nuclear status. I think is an important element. So I think we've been there and ensuring the stability of the region. Also, uncertainty about energy. Arguably, for India, it's been probably even more of a shock because more dependent on the region, large diaspora. So India and Europe have been part of this coalition of countries that are ready to step in once the conditions are right to ensure a lasting, free and open access through the Hormuz Strait. So you see, in that sense, we have a lot in common. And don't forget, we also have this IMEC, India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor that we signed up to in the margin of the G20 presidency of India. And I think this is the positive agenda, how we create this corridor of growth. So I think by injecting that growth, looking at the energy security supply, strategic stability, these are areas of common concern.
You mentioned IMEC. It looks like that IMEC is at pause because of the conflict in West Asia. Is it any work being done? Because yes, it was announced with big bang here in Delhi at the G20 summit. There was a work as well, especially on the eastern eastern corridor. But what's the future like? Are you optimistic? Because the sense one gets is that it's a long pause.
It's not a long pause because I think people think that nothing is happening. Actually, there have been working groups established and they are meeting. So there is work underway, sort of feasibility aspect, mapping out. So this kind of invisible groundwork that is foundational and essential is taking place. And don't forget that what we are talking about is a generational project. It would change the economic geography. So you can't expect that to happen overnight. And in a way, you could also make the point that the conflict that we've seen and the choke points that it created is actually vindicating the agenda of IMEC in looking at IMEC as a network of networks that connect EU, India, and the different growth regions together through multiple corridors, whether on land, at sea, under sea. So, we have two projects on the EU side, the Blue Raman digital cable, undersea cable between Europe and India with a branching out to Africa. We are looking at later this year for the green shipping corridor between India and Europe. So you see, IMEC is not in the, put in a box or in a freezer on the back burner. Actually, things are happening.
Coming to the people-to-people relationship, mobility is one aspect, education is another. Let's talk about mobility. How do you see Indians going to Europe? I know there's a big immigration debate in Europe, which is a very sensitive debate as well. But how do you see Indians as an important workforce in Europe, especially skilled Indians, and also when it comes to Indians going to Europe for education?
Yeah. No, I mean, first, true, there is a debate in Europe about migration, but about illegal migration. I think for too long, the countries of Europe and the EU has been, there were illegal trafficking of humans and actually in very sad conditions, squalid humanitarian conditions. So we are putting a brake and a hand onto that. So stopping illegal immigration is really the priority. Next to that, demography is such in Europe that our labor force is shrinking. So even though you will have, through technology, maybe less need for a workforce, still you will have gaps. And this is where actually in Europe, sector by sector, we are looking at what are our needs. And this is also where we've plugged what we call the mobility agenda with India. Starting with ICT workers. There is a demand for ICT workers in Europe. India has a significant pool of talent. So we are creating the sort of matchmaking between supply and demand. So I think this you will see increasingly in demand. ICT, but I could also say maybe in the future, health, hospitality. So there are sectors where I think this will grow. I mean, already and also the FTA. I mean, with an FTA in place, you will see more circulation of business people. With the attraction of Europe for Indian students, I just last week flagged off the latest cohort of our Erasmus students exchange program, and India has been over the last 20 years the top provider and of Erasmus students. I was impressed engaging with them how many are interested about Europe, want to study in Europe, and maybe to bring back knowledge, expertise. So this circulation of brain, this circulation of talent, you will see it more and more. So I'm pretty confident that this will be maybe the less visible, but through all these people connection, this circulation of people, you will actually create more glue, more connection. It will not just be the business, not just be the security or the government to government, but the people to people. This connection will grow. And maybe this is a remapping of India's own, a connection with the rest of the world, because historically it was the UK, it was Canada, the US, Australia, but now you will see more and more Indian people going to Europe, continental Europe.
There's some geographies that Indians might avoid in future because of the political situation, but it looks like one geography that's going to have advantage is Europe. There are other areas as well which are coming in front of the horizon, AI, space, agriculture to a certain extent, and cooperation on climate change as well. In fact, there is a deadly heat wave in Europe. We're getting reports almost on a daily basis, and both sides can see a cooperation. So how do you see areas like these where there can be convergences between India and European Union?
No, I think it's important that you highlight all the different dimensions of our partnership, because earlier this year at the summit we signed up to what we call a comprehensive strategic agenda, and you got different pillars which are mutually reinforcing. So trade goes together with the pillar of technology. More economic connection will also foster security and defense, people's mobility, and so everything is sort of comes together in different bricks. The elements you mentioned, in a way, connect to our Trade and Technology Council and Trade and Technology agenda. Europe and India and South Asia are two of the regions which will be the most impacted by climate change. And heat waves happened last year here. This year is in Europe. You got Super El Nino that's going to have a huge impact. There have been studies how much these climate hazards could wipe out years of investment and of GDP. So we have no other way than to develop mitigation and adaptation strategies. What is important both for Europe, and we've made that choice of decarbonizing our economy, and India is on this trajectory as well. I mean, coming from a different situation, a different historical background, but India today is the third largest producer of renewable energy. So for us, in a way, investing in clean tech and decarbonization of Indian economy is also in our interest, because it's one of the most effective way to combat climate change. So I think this is it's not just the big COP gatherings that we're talking about, is how concretely, bilaterally, through our technology and business contact, we can effectively contribute to decarbonization. In the context of our negotiations and our agreement, we also put together a 500 million euros plan that will support decarbonization activities in India. So, in a way, that is an agenda that is absolutely central, and that is at the cross-section of economy, technology, climate, and global commons. So I think there is a lot of traction for that.
And AI, because there's big AI debate, it looks like US and China are the two poles, and India and Europe can be the other pole coming together where rules are being written.
Yeah, I mean, in the AI, we are in a situation somehow that there is this leader's advantage that is sort of cumulative. China, by the sheer size of its economy and financial firepower, the US because of their big tech, and so they are sort of siphoning out all the funds, all the capital now. If you look at the stock exchange, it's all about the AI. And I think rarely in history you had such one product, one sector driving so much the business, the economy, and investment. So what I think is important for EU, and I suppose as much as for India, we don't want to be captive of a model that is imposed on us by the outside, either an authoritarian version from China as a state surveillance instrument, or an AI system designed by big tech, and sometimes we don't know how the algorithms are functioning. You know, we have put our own act to protect. What unites the EU and India is the human-centric dimension of AI. AI for a purpose. And I think that is key. AI that delivers goods for the people in terms of helping for development. AI which also reflection of the diversity of society. EU and India share this concept of unity in diversity. So development of large learning models, both in India as much as in the EU, will rest on how you capture that diversity, linguistic diversity, geographical diversity, traditions, the same way here with a different state. So this is where we need to cooperate. And I think the global governance, human-centric, is an important point. You cannot let a G2 govern AI. That is as simple as that.
Now the last word, you're leaving Delhi, India after your tenure. What will be your last word on seeing the India-EU relationship 2 years or 3 years down the lane, given the fact that much has happened in the last few years and it looks like it's time for dividends?
I think you have to hit the nail on the head. I think we are at the moment where we are in a very good place, but I think we need to be, totally focused on delivery and implementation. Sometimes, there is two dangers. One is managing expectation, to have too many expectations, and sometimes distraction because there is so much happening. So to stay focused on what we've agreed both sides to deliver, to do together, to implement it. Because if we don't do this, we will not rise up to what this partnership could deliver, not just for us, but for the world. And I think we cannot miss that opportunity. And I think I'm pretty confident that on both sides there is clearly a determination to move ahead, as I said, at speed and at scale, and to tap into the full potential of that. We are already doing it, having the FTA in place, having the investment protection in place, bringing the two technology and investment ecosystems together, producing here, producing there, facilitating investment and business connection, people connection. That would take some years. But once it's in motion, the train should be unstoppable. And I'm pretty sure that this is going to unfold and gain traction in the coming years. At least wherever I am in the future, I will certainly
keep a watch.
Keep a close watch on it, because having been part of that, I think it's one of, certainly for the EU, one of the fastest growing strategic partnership we have, and I think for India the same. So let's keep up the momentum.
Let's keep up the momentum. Thank you, Your Excellency, for coming to WION and giving us this interview, which talks about every aspect of the relationship. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Siddhan. Thank you.